Bismillah, Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ba'd. Welcome to this episode of Friday's Conversation with Ibrahim. Friday's Conversation with Ibrahim is a podcast that covers a wide variety of topics. These topics range from religion, philosophy, geopolitics, arts, literature, psychology, general knowledge, and so many more. Whatever your taste, rest assured that on Friday's Conversation with Ibrahim, we get you covered. Welcome aboard. In this episode of Friday's Conversation, we're going to look at something in religion. This is a continuation of part 1. In the previous episode, we looked at mental health from the perspective of the Islamic faith. If you missed part 1, we shall have a quick recap, but please be sure to watch the video for part 1. The link is provided below. Now, in part 1, other than explaining what mental health is all about, we looked at the significance of mental health. We mentioned how one's perception of self and their relationship with other human beings, their creator, and the environment is influenced by mental health. We also gave a list of quick facts and statistics that show how significant mental health is. We also addressed a number of misconceptions or myths that are related to mental health. For instance, we had a lengthy discussion on how some misconception, such as mental health being a manifestation of low faith or deficiency in faith, is misplaced. We also mentioned why mental health issues seem to be on the rise. We, for instance, suggested that maybe it seems to be on the rise now because there is increased awareness, especially with the advances in technology, information. And we also did not discount the fact that it may really be on the rise. So the two possibilities still hold. We also mentioned the place of lifestyle, how the changing family dynamics, the parenting style, and materialism has greatly also in a way contributed to what we think is the rise in mental health issues. We also mentioned media and technology, the overwhelming amount of information, the increased negativity in the media, as well as the phenomena called social media depression. And we also mentioned substance abuse. This is just a quick recap. For a clearer understanding of what I have just mentioned, please go back to the part 1 video. Now, before we move on, in this part, I would like you to reflect on something. What do you think are the consequences of the glorification of emotions and feelings? If you look around, there is so much encouragement of people to focus on their feelings and emotions, to the extent of this getting over-glorified. So what is the place of this glorification of emotions and feelings on our mental health? There is also obsession with pleasure. Like everywhere you turn, people are so much obsessed, and the media encourages this, that people are so much obsessed with seeking pleasure at all costs. The society as it is now is hypersexualized. How does this impact on our mental health? And there is also a culture of do you and you only live once, meaning do whatever it takes that gives you pleasure. Put yourself first. Forget about everyone and everything else. Do you. Now, definitely, this culture and lifestyle will impact on our mental health in one way or the other. So, how does this impact your mental health? From your perspective, reflect on this as we continue. Now, remember, when we talk of mental health, we're not just talking about the brain, we're talking about the emotions, we're talking about psychology, we're talking about social well-being. And we're talking about the fact that mental health affects our thoughts, feelings, and action. And it also determines how we handle stress, the everyday stress of life, how we engage in relationships, how we behave in our relationships, how we initiate and maintain relationships, and how we make healthy life choices. And remember, mental health is significant at all stages of life. It doesn't matter whether you're a child, whether you're a teenager, an adult, or an old person. Mental health is significant at all stages of life. Now, just some encouragement before we move on. Are you struggling with mental health challenges? Believe me, people look healthy. People engage in productive life. However, you'd be shocked by the statistics on how many of these sane or healthy looking people are grappling with mental health challenges and issues. If you are one, I could be one too, but if you are one, then remember that you're not alone, and neither are you the first. Now let's look at some important personalities. Since we are looking at mental health from the perspective of the Islamic faith, let's start by looking at the Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him. At the beginning of his mission, prior to the beginning of his mission, he was quite a likable young man, loved by everyone, trusted by everyone. In fact, he was called the trustworthy one. When he began his mission, which was a disruption of the then existing social order, people didn't take that kindly. He got harassed, he got insulted, he got threatened. His companions were mistreated, were harassed, were physically abused, subjected to violence. This, of course, affected the Prophet. And we can find something in the Quran to show this. For instance, in the Quran we're told, and I will read the Arabic version. وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ أَنَّكَ يَضِيقُ صَدْرُكَ بِمَا يَقُولُونَ. For instance, he's told that we know, Allah tells the Prophet that we know, of course, that your heart, your chest gets constricted. Now this simply refers to how he was getting emotionally disturbed, psychologically disturbed by the harassment. So this is one example. In the course of his mission right at the beginning, his clan and his followers were subjected to a boycott, and they were sent into exile. No one traded with them, no one spoke to them, no one had any kind of social contact with them. During this boycott and while they were in exile, life was so hard that people nearly died of starvation. And it is, in fact, reported that right after this boycott, he lost his dear wife. Somebody that stood by him, somebody that used her resources to help him out. It was so severe, he was so emotionally drained and sad that the whole year was referred to as the year of sorrow. Think of an episode when he was sent out of Mecca, his birthplace. A plot was hatched to kill him, and he had to flee for his life with his friend Abu Bakr. When they fled, the Meccans went out in pursuit of them. There was a time the Prophet ﷺ, remember I told you, ﷺ simply means may peace and the blessings of Allah be upon him. This is what we say whenever we mention the Prophet's name. So there was a time they were in hiding because the Meccans had caught up. Hiding in a cave, a shallow one. And they could see the people passing by, stopping and talking and threatening to check or go inside the cave. The fear, the tension, the stress was so severe for his companion Abu Bakr, such that the Prophet had to give him reassurance. A famous, again, verse. He told him in Arabic, La tahzan. Don't despair, don't be sad. He could only, of course, tell him this because he saw his companion as distressed, in despair, and anxious. Now, if you are familiar with the history of the Prophet, the life of the Prophet, may peace be upon him, you would be familiar with the fact that he lost most of his children. All the boys that all the sons he had, and some of his daughters. At one point, it is reported that while he was burying one of his sons called Ibrahim, he shed tears. He acknowledged that indeed the heart saddens, and tears are a natural reflection of the sadness. So he was sad, he despaired at times, he was anxious, he was stressed. All these are aspects of mental health. And this is a prophet of God. Let's look at another person, another prophet, Yaqub or Jacob, alayhi salam. Alayhi salam simply means peace be upon him too. The prophet Jacob or Yaqub lost one of his sons. The son didn't die, but some of his sons plotted to get rid of one of his favorite sons, Yusuf. So he lost him. He loved him so much. As a result of this loss, Yaqub was so much distressed that we're told in the Quran that his eyesight weakened. And some translators of the Quran say he lost his sight as a result of the grief, the crying, the grieving. You can imagine the kind or the amount of grief that leads to the weakening of your eyesight or the loss of your sight. So I am bringing this up as an introduction to this part because most of us go through these episodes of mental health challenges. In case you're going through such a patch at the moment, remember that you're not alone and neither are you the first. Now, what are some of the triggers, some of the causes? These are suggested triggers. Not one or two of these are solely responsible for setting off mental health crises and challenges. A combination of these and many more that we may not mention come into play. So the first thing regarded as a trigger involves childhood experiences, traumatic experiences, abuse experienced, neglect, or household dysfunction. Now, if you'd remember, one thing that is quite significant in Islam is right at the stage of setting up a family, a man or a woman are strictly asked or advised to choose whoever they partner up with wisely. This is because a choice of a partner greatly influences the kind of experiences they would have together and the kind of experiences that their children will also have. This is not all, but this is something quite significant, right from the beginning of choice of partner for marriage. So yes, childhood experiences play a great role. And that is why looking after kids is one of the obligations, and very serious obligations in fact. This is because there is a realization that anything that goes wrong with the kid would have a great impact, not just on the life of the kid, but also on the family and the society and the world as a whole. That is the first thing, the childhood experiences. The second trigger could be ongoing life circumstances and challenges. Significant life changes. Somebody may have lost a job, lost business, lost loved ones, or something major. Crisis, violence erupting in the country, and therefore people fleeing for their lives, migrating, leaving their homeland. Significant life changes. Family conflict and distress. Conflict within the family not only affects the partners, the spouses, but also the kids and the extended family members. So family conflict and distress, ongoing chronic medical conditions, terminal illnesses such as cancer, and so on and so forth, or other stresses of life, which is exacerbated by lack of support systems and resources. Biological factors also play a role, because sometimes some kinds of depression and mental health issues are attributed to chemical imbalance in the brain, or maybe ingestion of some toxin, or maybe deficiency in some vitamins and minerals. Substance abuse is also a trigger. And then something else that maybe the atheists, people that don't believe in the existence of God, may not find plausible, is the spiritual cause. The human being is a complex being, not just a physical and psychological being, but also a spiritual one. Religion believes that a human being was brought to earth for a purpose, to serve a spiritual purpose. And so the spiritual aspect of a human being is quite a significant one. And almost across major Abrahamic faiths, you will realize the existence of Satan, or what in Islam is referred to as Iblis. Now, this is a sworn enemy of the children of Adam, and it is reported in a number of verses in the Holy Quran that this creature, this creation, because this is a creation of God also, just like ourselves, and he is from jinn. So this creation is capable of causing confusion and affecting the mental and the emotional states of a person. So there is, yes, indeed, a spiritual aspect to mental health, which can be attributed to Satan or Iblis or Shaitan. Now, having mentioned some of the triggers, let's look at some common mental health issues. This is not an exhaustive list. One is stress, which is quite common. Everyone goes through this at some point in their life and to varying degrees. Stress causes physical, emotional, and behavioral disorders. The way we cope with stress, the amount of stress that we are subjected to, can cause physical, emotional, and behavioral disorders. It can also affect health and peace of mind. It can also, the way we cope with it, how we respond to it, also may affect our personal and professional relationships. So stress is the first. There is also generalized anxiety disorder, like excessive feeling of fear or worry about things that are independent of stress-causing event. For instance, somebody feeling like they're about to die or they're going to die, fear of death, fear of significant loss, unexplained agitation. Going through this when there isn't anything, like realistically going on. You could be, for instance, preparing to sit for an interview or have just sat for an interview and waiting for a feedback, or maybe you've just seen some sick person, or it could be anything within your environment. And then all of a sudden you're getting so anxious, you're even so anxious to the point of thinking about dying or losing your life, or maybe experiencing something tragic. This is generalized anxiety disorder. There are panic attacks. Like there are people that just panic. And these episodes are so severe, they peak within minutes and it is intense. Sometimes people experience this when they're thinking of exams or interviews and stuff like that. Or some people just go through them without any apparent reason. They just panic. So this is a third example. And then there is major depressive disorder, and this is what we call depression. A feeling of constant hopelessness and despair. It is so severe and sometimes debilitating. It affects individuals' daily ability to work, sleep, eat, and enjoy things in life. And marital issues that can be settled by physical or psychological abuse. Having looked at some examples of mental health issues, common mental health issues, what I'm going to do is to give a quick tip on how to maintain a healthy and stable mental health. However, this is just some quick tips, because in part 3 we're going to look at practical ways of maintaining or dealing with or preventing mental health issues. Practical ways, of course, according to the perspective of Islam. So this is just quick tip, because I want to wrap up with this. I do not want to leave you with nothing. So quickly, just some quick tips as a form of some quick tips. We need to approach mental health in a holistic and multidimensional manner. We need to look at our physical health. We need to exercise, look after our hygiene, go for regular checkups, exercise, and eat well. We also need to think about our mental health by monitoring our thoughts, whether they are positive, negative, what the triggers are, and how useful and functional these thoughts are. We also need to ask whether these thoughts are helpful to our everyday life. Then the other aspect is the emotional health. We need to be conscious of our feelings and emotions, how positive or negative they are, what triggers them, and we need to learn how to regulate them and not be slaves to our feelings and emotions. We also need to look at the social or behavioral health. We need to look at our relationships, our interactions, the quality of these interactions, the function of these interactions, how useful they are, how functional, and whether they are positive or negative, and if there are any issues arising out of conflict, how quickly that can be resolved. We also need to look at the spiritual health, the connection with the Creator, remembrance of the Creator, the obligations towards our Creator. We also need to look at this. So looking at these 5 aspects, achieving some balance in these 5 aspects is one quick way of taking or maintaining or preventing mental health issues. Remember, these are just quick tips. We're going to look at an exhaustive discussion. We're going to have an exhaustive discussion on practical and real-life tips, according to Islam, on how to prevent, maintain, and deal with mental health issues. This brings us to the end of part 2. Thank you for joining us on this journey. I look forward to having you on part 3 also. Be blessed. Goodbye. Thank you.